What's up, everybody? My name is Kier, and you are watching The Important Things That Really Matter. And today we're going to be talking about the best ancestry tests for African Americans. We're going to be talking about the best ancestry tests for African Americans, but not just for African Americans, for Black people around the world also too. All right. So this is part two of the best ancestry tests for African Americans, and then I'll also include Black people around the world, period. So in the first part one, I talked a little bit about my journey, my quest, and trying to find out more about myself and more about my family members, because going through the public school system at the time, the Detroit public school system really did not teach me much about myself, about Black people. You would think that they would, but they did not really teach me as much as I really should have known as far as my ancestry, or rather about Black history. And so I talked a little bit about that in part one. Also talked about the fact that I started getting kind of really angry when I found out that when I got into the university, which was a Big Ten university, I started doing research on Black inventors and Black scientists, and come to find out all the many things that Black African American people invented, such as the creation of blood banks, the finding out the differences between the different blood types was done by a Black man by the name of Dr. Charles Drew. He found out the differences in the different blood types and why you can mix some blood with another blood, and why some blood you can't mix with another type of blood. He found that information out. Then he started the blood banks in the United States and in the United Kingdom also too. All right. In addition to that, I talked a little bit about Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, who was a Black man who was who had performed one of the first successful open heart surgeries. And the man who he had performed the open heart surgery on successfully, that man outlived him. Dr. Daniel Hale Williams also created, I do believe it was Meharry Hospital or Meharry University. Black man built this facility himself, along with the help of other people, to train Black doctors. Then also too, in addition to that, you need to do research and find books in your library and show the rest of your family members or the rest of your children. Go to the library, find books on Black inventors and Black scientists, African American inventors and African American scientists, African American patents, African American inventions. Get these books, learn, reading this information for yourself. You know, where a lot of us are not given this information. You need to find out information about Dr. George Washington Carver, who came up with all different type of invaluable inventions by using agriculture. Okay, Dr. George Washington Carver was such a brilliant Black man that he did business with Henry Ford, the guy who created the Ford Motor Company. Okay, he worked very closely with Henry Ford, and as a result of working very closely with Henry Ford, he helped him come up with a process by which you could spray paint metal, and the spray paint would stick to the metal. He came up with a process for him to do that. And I found that out not too long ago that I don't think that Henry Ford really actually paid him for that information. But George Washington Carver told Henry Ford, I tell you what, instead of paying me, let my people, my Black people, work in your factories. And Mr. Henry Ford did that. He let a lot of Black people work in his factories, in his plants, and we can thank George Washington Carver for that, and we can thank Henry Ford for that. So because of what took place, the manufacturing facilities of Ford, GM, and Chrysler, come to find out later on that about 6 million African American people migrated. 6 million migrated from the South up to the North, and they went to 3 major cities. the three major cities that they went to were Detroit, New York, and Chicago. You also find that these cities also have manufacturing facilities there, and the automotive and other companies. So, saying all that to say this is part of our history. And what I found out, I guess within the last 3 or 4 months about George Washington Carver asking Henry Ford to let all of our people, African-American people, to work in his plants, influenced all of us to be able to work in his plants and his facilities and stuff. And he did that instead of getting paid. So if he had got paid by Henry Ford, he would have been super rich for the process that he came up with to be able to spray paint metal with paint, okay, successfully. So anyway, that's very, very useful information that we all need to know. And back to what I was saying before about my journey, I wanted to find out more about myself and more about my family. And as I was stating before in the previous video, part 1, the best ancestry test for African Americans, I talked about the best tests, why you should go on one test as opposed to another test, and the disadvantages, and also talk about my journey. So this is a continuation of that. I started out with one particular ancestry test that's very, very well known, very widely marketed. And when I got that test, that particular ancestry test had some small print stating that they own the DNA that you send them, which made me feel extremely uncomfortable. Made me feel extremely uncomfortable to read the fine print that they own the DNA that you send them. Now you're paying them to do a service for you to find out what country in Africa that you and your family came from, and hopefully maybe even what tribe you came from. But you're paying them to do this service for you, and they're telling you that they own your DNA. To me, I thought that was crazy. Absolutely crazy that they own my DNA. So I never did send that back. And then about a year or so later, after I did that, did not send that back to them after I read it, even though I paid for it, I ran across this other ancestry test, which I feel is the best ancestry test for African Americans and the best ancestry test for Black people, period, around the world. And that ancestry test is African Ancestry. Once again, African Ancestry, African Ancestry. I do not get paid by them at all. But one of the things that I loved about African Ancestry is they're supposed to have the largest database for African Americans, of what country that you and your ancestors came from based upon the DNA that you send them. They also have the largest database in terms of what tribe, what specific tribes that you may have came from, whether it's your mother's side of the family or whether it's your father's side of the family, all right? I found that information out. They do not own your DNA that you send them. You send them your DNA, they destroy it after they finish using it. Once again, African Ancestry destroys your DNA that you sent them after they finish using it to be able to determine what country your parents came from and your ancestors came from, and also what tribes your ancestors came from, okay? They have the largest database to be able to tell you what countries and what specific tribes that you and your family members came from. And what I did on my particular journey was this. I wanted to find out both sides of my family. Now, I don't know what the price is right now, but when I did this about a year and a half ago through African Ancestry, it cost $300 for the mother side of the family, and it cost $300 for the father side of the family. I wanted to find this information out about myself and my family members. Now, one of my other family members had went through one of the other ancestry tests, And she had found out from one of the other ancestry tests that our family came from Cameroon. All right. Now, she used the other one, the one that's widely used and widely marketed, the one that they own your DNA after you send it to them, okay? So she shared that information with me. So when I did the test from African ancestry, which is the best ancestry test for African Americans and Black people around the world, when I did the test, it also confirmed that my mother's side of the family came from Cameroon. Not only did they come from Cameroon, but the specific tribe that I came from, it gave me that information. And that specific tribe that we got that information from actually was the tribe that were the musicians, the singers, the poets, the songwriters, the music producers, the actors, those people that were very, very creative. And so you may not know this, I'm quite sure you don't know this if you're looking at this video, but I am a music producer, a music composer, a songwriter, a poet, a performer. I'm also a studio engineer. I mix my CDs, I master my CDs and my music and stuff. I do all that along with perform, along with composing music, along with writing the poetry, along with writing the songs. And what really extremely amazed me was that throughout all those hundreds of years, that all those talents, abilities, and skills came through the DNA all the way up to me. And I was like, wow, can you believe this? Wow. All those talents, abilities, and skills that came through the DNA all the way to me, okay? And so I do all that. I put together CDs, I perform, I write, compose music, I do all that stuff. And then in addition to all that other stuff, I'm also a auto engineer too, in addition to being a studio engineer on top of it. I worked very, very closely with advanced manufacturing. I worked on launches of new vehicles. I did all that stuff, still doing some of that stuff right now. And so anyway, so it's very, very interesting. This is some of the information that you will find out. Now, one of the things that I found out from the tribe, who came from my tribe in Africa, one of the things that I found out was that Quincy Jones was part of the tribe that I came from in Africa. Quincy Jones, Oprah Winfrey came from the tribe that I'm from in Africa. My family's from the mother side of the family in Africa. Who else was it? Spike Lee is from the tribe in Africa. Sherry Lee Ralph. And now when I was a teenager, I used to come home from school and see her in one of the TV shows. I used to think that was a beautiful, gorgeous Black woman. I'm like, oh, that woman is beautiful, 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 dark chocolate brown skin, beautiful woman, beautiful. I used to come home and watch that television show just to look at that beautiful, gorgeous Black woman, okay? And what I found out was she's from my tribe. Not only was she from my tribe, who else is from my tribe? Brother. I said Spike Lee, Quincy Jones, Oprah Winfrey, few other people. I think Blair Underwood is also part of my tribe, and a number of other people.